Welcome to YouTube channel Be Ready and our video titled Food, where we will address the question, what food would Noah store on the ark if he were preparing today for God's wrath to be poured out upon the world? This video expands on the teachings found in our Rapture Series video titled How to Prepare for the Rapture. Notably, even in the absence of biblical teachings, you will find value in this video because food ranks number 2 among the top 3 requirements for sustaining life. The average adult can live without water for about 3 to 7 days, depending on health and environmental conditions. Without food, the average adult can survive for about 3 to 6 weeks, depending on individual health conditions. And without shelter, survivability depends mostly upon external factors. At the end of this video, we have provided reference charts showing shelf life of various foods and the varieties you may want to store on hand. These reference charts also include individual food item costs as of May 2022 and total food costs for your budgeting purposes. With that said, let us begin today's study on the topic of food by reviewing some of what God has said about food. And God said unto Noah, Take thou unto thee of all food that is eaten. If God gave this commandment to Noah today, what food would Noah stock on the ark? And more to the point, if God commanded you to store up food, what food would you stock in your home? Let us consider what Jesus said to his disciples. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Therefore, be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not, the Son of Man cometh. Who then is a faithful and wise servant, to give his household meat in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing. Jesus gave this instruction to his disciples shortly before his crucifixion. And this warning and promise was given specifically to guide Christ's followers in our day, in these last days, these days of the world leading up to the second coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. Jesus warned us in Matthew 24 that when wickedness abounds upon the earth, as it did in the times of Noah and the flood, that we would know his return approaches and will soon be upon us. Jesus promised that we would be blessed at his coming if we were found faithful and wise. In particular, Jesus promised that blessings would be poured out upon those followers who gave their households meat in due season. Jesus also told us exactly what we must do to give meat to our households in due season. We must be ready in our day, as Noah was ready in his day. And what was it God said to Noah? He said, Take thou unto thee of all food that is eaten. Thus, God has commanded you to store up food, in preparation for the tribulations to come, just as he commanded Noah to store up food, in preparation for the tribulations in his age of the world. So, in this video, we are going to get very specific about some of the foods we believe Noah would bring into his ark if he were alive today, in our age of the world. But first, there is more in Christ's teaching about food from Matthew chapter 24. What truly did Jesus mean when he warned that faithful followers are to give their households meat in due season? Today, when we think of meat, we think of beef and fish and chicken and ham and any of the other animal-based foods we call meat. But what did Jesus mean when he said meat? Today, when we say season, we typically mean spring or summer or fall or winter. But what did Jesus mean when he said in due season? In answer to these two questions, and in preparation for our deep dive into specific foods we, as Christ's followers, should be stocking in our homes, let us gain a clear understanding of what Jesus meant by meat in due season. And out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight, and good for food. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things. So according to the Bible, meat literally means food of every kind, including meat from animals, fruit, vegetables, and herbs of every kind. But the Bible teaches us more. And Jesus said unto them, My meat is to do the will of him that sent me, and to finish his work. So Jesus saith, Lovest thou me? Then feed my sheep. And they did eat the same spiritual meat, and did drink the same spiritual drink. When Jesus told us to provide meat, he was telling us to store up food of every kind, including food for the spiritual growth of our households. In our video, How to Prepare for the Rapture, we spoke in detail about this spiritual meat, how through faith and obedience we can walk with God, just as Noah and Enoch walked with God. Jesus teaches us to provide meat in due season, and the Bible tells us the Lord's meaning for this teaching as well. I have fed you with milk, and not with meat, for hitherto ye were not able to bear it. The needs of infants are different than the needs of youth, just as the needs of youth differ from the needs of adults, and the needs of the elderly, and the needs of the infirm. These are the seasons of our lives. The scriptures teach us that we are to store up food appropriate for those of our household. This means that the food we store in our homes must include food appropriate for each and every individual living within our households, with specific care taken for those with specific dietary requirements. Thus, in due season. As we produce this video, in the late spring of 2022, the United States is undergoing mass shortages of baby formula. For those parents with infants who require formula, this is a very trying time. It is essentially a time of famine, a time of tribulation. Those parents who have been heeding the teachings of Jesus to store up food for their households in due season have ample formula on hand to endure this famine. For them, the formula famine is passing over their households, as surely as the destroying angel passed over the households of the Lord's followers in the days of Moses in Egypt. Meat in due season means that we are to keep on hand food sufficient to meet the current and ever-changing needs of those within our households. Food shortages caused by government policies, drought, supply chain interruptions, or any other cause are equally devastating to those who have no food. Famines do not care why there is no food. In 2020, for example, COVID-19 shutdowns and panic buying left grocery stores with empty shelves and overwhelmed food banks beyond their capacity. But those obedient to the warning of Jesus carried on with little tribulation because they had an abundance of food for their loved ones. Jesus foretold famine among the trials and tribulations of our time. In the spring of 2020, it was groceries in general that ran out. In the spring of 2022, it was baby formula. Tomorrow, it may be produce, or beef, or everything in the grocery store all at the same time. One cannot say for certain. What we can be sure of is that baby formula will not be the last food we will run short of as the great and dreadful day of the Lord approaches. As this video is being produced in June of 2022, the racks of food at Costco and Sam's Club are bursting at the seams, fully loaded and overstocked, And while grocery stores in general have full shelves of most food products, we must not allow this current abundance of food lull us into a false sense of complacency. If we learned any lesson from 2020 and COVID-19, it is that our access to food can fall from abundance to vacant shelves in less than a day. Jesus told us that we must be ready in our day as Noah was ready in his day. The Lord instructed Noah to store up food of all types that are eaten. And the Lord in Matthew 24 has given you this same instruction. Without food, you cannot know joy, and without food, you cannot long endure. There are those who teach that Jesus will return and rapture his followers before the time of tribulation begins. And we are not here to dispute or to affirm this teaching. But we offer you this caution from the book of Matthew. And except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Thus, while it may be true that Christ shall come for his church, to rapture his saints before his second coming, and perhaps even before the great tribulation, it is also true that his elect, his truest, his most faithful and most obedient followers will be tried and will be tested prior to the rapture of Christ's church. If it were not so, the Lord would have no reason to shorten the days leading up to his return in order to save his elect. We can already feel the shortening of days. Trials and calamities are occurring at an ever-quickening pace. Each year sees more sin and more violence and more assaults on Christian freedoms and liberties. There is no doubt that trials and tribulations are upon us, even at our doorsteps. Thus, God has commanded you to store up food in preparation for the tribulations to come, just as he commanded Noah to store up food in preparation for the tribulations in his age of the world. And how much food would the Lord have you store up? The scriptures answer this question as well. As noted in our video, How to Prepare for the Rapture, the Bible teaches that Noah was on the ark for 1 year and 10 days. Thus we learn from Noah's example that Christ wants his followers to keep enough food on hand to feed their households for just longer than 1 year. For the sake of simplicity, let's just call it a 12-month food supply. But that was the easy question. The more challenging question is, what food should you stock on hand? Clearly, the food shown in this basket would not keep for more than a couple weeks, let alone for the 12 months shown by Noah's example. Still, there are many foods readily available today that last for 2, 3, and even 4 years or longer when properly stored, which leads us to our first food storage tip. To maximize the shelf life of your food, store it in a cool and dry location. This means avoid storing your food in your garage because garages are rarely cool. Inside your house or apartment is always better because you typically keep your home cool and dry. So storing food in your kitchen, basement, pantry, or in closets or even under beds work best for food storage. Food storage tip number 2. The best buy dates found on most food in the grocery store are not expiration dates. Best buy dates typically indicate the date after which the manufacturer no longer guarantees optimal freshness and flavor and nutritional values. This is particularly true of packaged dry goods, such as cookies, crackers, chips, and so on. Nevertheless, Dry goods are still a reasonable place to start when it comes to choosing what food to store up, as Noah might do if he were stocking the ark today. Barilla pasta has about a 2-year best by period, meaning you should be able to keep it on your shelf for about 2 years after your date of purchase. Canned vegetables, such as Del Monte whole kernel corn, also have about a 2-year best by period. An important added benefit of canned vegetables is that they are often canned with extra water. If water becomes in short supply, this water can be used for cooking your pasta and your rice and your top ramen or other dried goods. In a pinch, you can even use this water for drinking. Water is, of course, necessary for sustaining life. Storing vegetables that are canned with water could turn out to be a double blessing to you and your household. Top ramen also has about a 2-year best by period from your date of purchase. Some survivalists and preppers believe that top ramen will last for decades after the best by period expires. But in this video, we are focused on doing as Noah might do if he were preparing for the rapture and Christ's second coming. So, for our purposes, it is enough that the food you stock on hand lasts for 12 months or longer. And to meet this objective, best by dates that give you 2 years or longer will do nicely, without concerning ourselves with how long the food may last after the best by dates expire. Del Monte green beans, for example, also have about a 2-year best by period, making them another great choice for your 12-month food supply. Which leads us to another important food storage tip. Rotate your stock of food. The reason for storing food that has best by dates extending out for 2 or more years is because this allows you time to figure out which foods to stock more of and which foods to stock less of, depending, of course, on how much of each type of food your household eats on a regular basis. Longer best by dates allow you to practice rotating your food so that you don't have food spoil before you work it into your weekly and monthly meal routines. Along this line of thinking, most white rice products will last about 4 years from the date of purchase when properly stored, and up to 30 years if vacuum sealed in Mylar bags. Noah, we expect, would have been more than satisfied with the 4-year shelf life. But for food rotation purposes, if you buy rice in 25-pound bags, you will be comforted to know that you have plenty of time to practice rotating the rice without any concerns of it spoiling before you have a chance to eat it. You may have noticed that, like these Del Monte sweet peas with a 2-year best by date, the foods featured in this video are shown in bulk quantities or in cases. When you purchase food in cases, not only do you reduce per serving cost, but you will also find food that is packed in cases is much easier to stack and store, much easier than food that is sold in individual packages or individual cans. Which brings us to our next food storage tip. Get a Sharpie or similar marker to write the best by dates on your packages as you store them away. This will help you rotate your food as you make new purchases. Move the food with older dates into your kitchen for easy access, and place your newly purchased food with longer best by dates into areas set aside for storage. While it is true that best by dates are already printed on food packaging, these can be very small and are often difficult to find and read. Rewriting the best by dates allows you to make the dates larger and easier to read and positioned on the packaging where they are easier to see when stored at the back of shelves or under beds or in closets. Also, don't be afraid to try new foods, particularly when they have longer shelf lives than those you're accustomed to, and especially when they make full meals in single servings. This makes your food easy to store and easy to serve to your household. For example, canned food, such as beef stew by Dinty Moore, satisfies several dietary needs in a single, easy-to-store package. And an additional and important benefit to this particular food storage option is that Dinty Moore beef stew typically has Best By dates reaching far into the future, as far as 3 or 4 years, meaning it will typically retain its freshness and its flavor and its nutritional value for 3 to 4 years from the date you buy it. Like Dinty Moore beef stew, Marie Collander's chicken soup satisfies several dietary needs in a single serving and is easy to store. Though the Best By dates are usually limited to about 12 to 18 months, these are still long enough Best By dates to meet our recommended 12-month shelf life requirement. Sam's Club also has flats of Campbell's soup, from tomato to chicken noodle and others for less than $1 per can. With Best By dates averaging from about 18 months to 2 years, Campbell's is a tradition that fits very nicely with Noah's food readiness schedule. Which makes this a good time for our next food storage tip. Don't stock food you don't like to eat. The Lord has asked you to prepare so that you can endure the times of tribulation without suffering. While future food shortages may deny you access to many tasty foods, this does not mean you should stock food you do not like to eat on a regular basis. It is best if you can identify foods that you like and that you eat regularly and that will keep on your shelves for 2 or more years. For more foods to consider, Hormel chili typically has a 2 to 3 year Best By period, as do Bush's baked beans and Bush's black beans, as well as Rosarita traditional refried beans, making all of these popular canned foods perfect for your 12-month food supply. To add a little meat to your selection, Keystone all-natural beef typically has a 4-year Best By period, one of the longest Best By periods we've found in canned foods. Another advantage to canned food is that during crisis situations, such as disruptions of electricity or unavailability of gas for your stove, most food that is packaged in cans can be eaten cold, straight from the can, without cooking. And, unlike frozen foods, there is no concern about your canned food spoiling due to an electrical outage. For more variety, you may want to consider Kirkland chicken breast, which has about a 2-year Best By period, and Members Mark Premium Chunk Chicken Breast, which has a 3-year Best By period, or Kirkland Pink Salmon, which has about a 4-year Best By period, putting it in the same category as Keystone Beef and Dinty Moore Beef Stew in terms of how long it will keep on your pantry shelves. Members Only Albacore Tuna has about a 2-year Best By period, while Spam has about a 3-year Best By period. This video is about storing 12 months of food for your household. Because the Lord instructed us to prepare in these last days the way that Noah prepared in his day. If you live on a farm or homestead, you can add gardening to foods like those highlighted in this video. If, on the other hand, you live in urban or suburban areas, focus on food that will sustain you for 12 months, without having to rely on perishable foods, such as fruits and vegetables. This may sound contrary to everything you have ever heard about a healthy diet, but hear us out. Eating fresh fruit and vegetables each week is important. Certainly you should continue to do so. But as for food storage, focus on foods that will sustain your household when food scarcity is at its peak, like when produce in the grocery store has become limited or entirely unavailable for what could be extended periods of time. Remember, Our purpose here is not directed at self-sufficiency or rural living or homestead living or even disaster preparedness. Our focus here is about heeding the Lord's warnings to his followers, to ready ourselves for the rapture, or to endure the tribulations that will precede Christ's return. Today's video is about inspiring you to stock up on tasty foods you already enjoy and possibly trying out some new foods that may have best-by dates reaching further into the future than those you currently eat on a regular basis. Speaking of tasty, for those who love peaches, you will be delighted to learn that Del Monte sliced peaches have about a 2-year best-by period. And this tasty treat rounds out our examples of food that Noah might stock on the ark if he were stocking it today. But by no means are you limited to the foods we have featured in this video. Rather, we hope that you are inspired to look within your cupboards to see what foods you eat on a regular basis, compare the best-by dates, and begin to implement your own 12-month food storage plan. Remember, too, this is not a one-day project. We do not encourage you to rush out and empty your savings account in order to stock up on food. What we do encourage you to do is to take the next few days to develop a list of foods and quantities that will sustain your household for 12 months. Then over the next few months, start knocking out your list until you have accumulated your 12-month supply. After that, eat, rotate, and restock as needed to meet all the needs of your household in due season. As promised, the next few pages will provide you with charts that include each of the food items highlighted in this video, together with their appropriate shelf life and their serving sizes when purchased by the case or in bulk. Then, importantly, the second to last column to the right shows how many meals you might consider for each food item per month. And then finally, the far right column shows the corresponding number of meals you would need to store on hand per person to last 12 months. Your ultimate goal is to store up 730 to 750 meals per person. This will supply you with 2 meals per day per person if no other food is available to you. If you copy each of these charts and use them as a shopping list, you would have enough food for one adult to eat 2 meals a day for about 12 months. Naturally, you can increase items or decrease items as you see fit. And you can also eliminate items that you do not like and substitute in other items that you do like. You can even scrap these charts entirely and just use them as a rule of thumb for creating your own charts and lists as you think best for your household. Our purpose here is to inspire you and to give you a place to begin. You will notice on this page that we have already added some food items that did not appear earlier in this video, such as Idahoan mashed potatoes, Musselman's sliced apples, and Del Monte fruit cocktail. As you develop your 12-month food storage plan, you should continue to modify these charts so that you emphasize food that you enjoy and continue to focus on the particular needs of those in your household, especially as the seasons of their lives change over time. The bottom row of this chart highlights points of interest and gives you the total food cost for one person for 1 year if you followed this chart to the letter. This blank sheet is provided for you to take a screenshot and then make as many copies as you see best for yourself and your household. Remember, your goal here is to stock on hand enough food to sustain your household for about 12 months, assuming that some future circumstance makes it difficult or impossible for you to purchase food from your local grocery store. Importantly, you could cut the quantities used in the previous charts in half if you assume that during famine conditions you are likely to cut your food portions in half in order to extend your food supply. Be it the mark of the beast, food chain interruptions, or an actual famine that wipes out food supplies, Jesus has warned you and has promised you blessings if you will heed his warning to store up food in your home as Noah did in his ark. With that, we thank you for joining us for our video titled Food. This is the first in our 12-part Noah's 1-Year Preparation series. The other 11 videos in this series cover topics such as water, personal hygiene, medicine, clothing, electricity, and more. This food video was released in June of 2022, with the next video to be released in this series under the title Water. We hope you will join us for that video as well. Until then, we say, be blessed and be ready.